Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon for access to new videos 12 to 24 hours early, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. As a still licensed but not currently practicing pharmacist, I regularly get a fair amount of health-related, medication-related questions from friends and family. That's because my friends and family know that I have my doctorate in pharmacy and trust that I will give them the best answer I have to their question based on the available guidelines and evidence. And equally importantly, that if I don't know the answer, or if medical science does not currently have an answer, I will tell them exactly that, instead of just making something up in an attempt to appease them or to have the comfort of an answer. Unfortunately, medical science does not have the answer to every symptom, question, concern, or pattern. The reason it doesn't have the answer to everything is because medical science requires a standard of evidence to be met. This can be very discomforting and frustrating, but it is better than the horrific and barbaric practices that regularly happened in the days when we did not require testing and evidence for medical practices. Nonetheless, I suspect that this is one of many reasons why people willingly give their money to supplementary, complementary, and alternative medicine, or scam practitioners, SCAM. They will always have an answer for everything. They will never say they don't know, because their knowledge base is unconstrained by reality and the limitations of evidence. And it cannot be tested, or it is rendered ineffective by the negative vibrations that come with controlled studies. See, you have to remember that unlike when you run randomized placebo-controlled trials on new pharmaceuticals, where if the results for the placebo and the results for the new drug are the same, you go, okay, so the drug doesn't work. For scam treatments, if the placebo and the treatment have the same result, that tells you that doing a randomized controlled trial is preventing the treatment from working. In fact, nearly all scam treatments are impeded or interfered with by any type of placebo control, or blinding, or randomization, or objective measurement criteria. It's a lot like when your older sister tells you that Santa isn't real, but you know he's real, so you stay up on Christmas Eve to see him yourself. But because you're staying up watching, Santa actually hands off the presents to your parents so that they can put them under the tree. Because after all, it would be unfair to the other children if you got to give your list to Santa in person. He's real. He's just not coming down the chimney because he knows that you're watching. But really, you can't prove to me that Santa doesn't exist. You really can't. Just like I can't prove that my quads are not sore because my chakras are not aligned. But isn't it at least a little bit easier to believe that maybe my quads are just sore because I hiked 5,000 vertical feet this weekend and that has caused lactic acid buildup? Maybe Santa knew I was going to stay up and try to catch him, and he has a rule about not letting one kid get an unfair persuasive advantage, so instead of coming down the chimney, he passed off the presents to my parents, and then they put them under the tree. But isn't it a lot easier to believe that perhaps it was always just my parents putting the presents under the tree? Well, Rachel's latest 2 podcast episodes are titled Your Intuition and Healing Your Body, which personally I think is absolutely fantastic, because I can think of no one more qualified to tell us about how to heal our bodies than Rachel HOLLIS, who has no college degree in anything. Am I saying that you have to have a college degree? To provide me with information on how to heal my body? Yes, I am. As a biological living organism, I would like to see, some biology coursework under your belt for starters, just like make sure you know how it works. I don't care how many chakras you can align. If you can't explain which bacteria beta-lactam compounds are effective on and why, because one of those things is a bunch of woo-woo exoticized cultural appropriation, and the other is potentially a life or death situation. I've still got a lot of rant left in me, but I think we should go ahead and start through the podcast, and I'll deliver more of what I've got to say on the topic as the issues arise within it. God, I can already tell this one's really going to piss me off. Let's go! Also, I might fix this phone while we're listening, okay? Just have something to do with my hands. This is going to piss me off.
Hey guys, it's Rachel, and welcome to another episode of the podcast and a conversation about spirituality, consciousness, intuition, how we can tap into something bigger than ourselves, how we can learn to listen to that voice inside of us, how we can understand our bodies and how pain manifests in our bodies. We are talking about all kinds of things this week because I'm really excited to welcome back one of our most popular guests of the show, which is my friend Kimberly Lucas. Kim is, I guess the easiest way to describe her is as an energy healer, but
what does that mean?
She's so much more than that. When I'm sending one of my friends to her, I always say that meeting with Kimberly is like going to a therapist, but that therapist is also tapping into like your ancestors and your spirit guides.
Most of my ancestors are dead, so maybe I would prefer if she didn't put words in their mouth, please, because see, they're dead, so that means they can't communicate with me. That would make me so mad. Like, how dare you?
And she's so wise and has really helped me in my healing journey. And she's one of those people that I'm really lucky to get to be friends with in real life. And when we go out and grab coffee, we always have the most interesting conversations.
Yeah, citation needed.
And we were meant to do that this week. We were meant to go grab coffee and be friends and just catch up. And the night...
Imagine thinking going to get coffee with a friend is something that was meant to happen. Like, wow. Everything is so profound with these people. It's like, okay, like, settle down. You're not that big of a deal.
Before, we were texting back and forth about all of the things that we wanted to talk about. And she and I are both really interested in our bodies and pain. And we both have experienced healing of pain in our bodies where the pain was emotional, not physical. And so we were talking back and forth in text, and I was sharing a book with her and she was sharing one with me. And then I just had this intuition. I was like, oh, okay. Dude, could we just get coffee and then come back to my house and just record a podcast? Essentially, could we?
The transactional friendships, just like your ex-husband. Yeah, you can't, you got to monetize it, don't you? You got to monetize it. Can't sell the conversation if you don't record a podcast.
Have the conversation we would have had otherwise, but just record it. And she was so gracious, was like, yes, absolutely. And what you're going to hear now is that conversation. It was meant to be 45 minutes. We talked for an hour and a half. And so I'm going to break it into two parts. But I really think that no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, whether you're very far along, whether you've just begun to sort of seek and learn more about that inner knowing, that still small voice inside of you, or whether you have never considered any of this before and you're just starting, I hope, my fingers are crossed, that you'll find this conversation.
Isn't that a phrase from like Christianity? Like, did she just borrow a voice, like a phrase from Christianity to go talk about energy healing and chakras, the still small voice? Oh, there's a finch outside. That's so cute. Enjoy. Hello, finch. It's a house finch.
Really interesting. And what we cover most in this first part is pain in the body. So for both of us, separately, before we knew each other, we had both experienced different types of pain that, like most people, we learned to treat with ibuprofen, with medicine, with different modalities, but the pain never really went away. The pain never went away until we understood that it wasn't a physical problem, it was an emotional one, because our emotions sort of get stuck inside our body. And if we don't clear them, they manifest as physical ailments. The word disease literally is dis-ease. You have dis-ease in your body and sort of it manifests. So sometimes the pain in your body is because you actually physically hurt yourself. You broke a bone or you have a...
Does she think that this is a groundbreaking discovery? Everybody knows that. This is standard medical science, that emotional shit can make you hurt or make you hurt worse. This isn't something that is the exclusive domain of bullshit healers, okay? And I don't know why you would expect ibuprofen to make your pain go away long term. All you're doing is just masking it. That's why you try not to use that stuff for too long, because you might even hurt yourself more because you won't be getting the signal that you should stop. I don't know. Like, I feel like these people think that if there's anything emotional, then we're just like, no, and this is medicine. You can't talk. It's like, no. See, emotional and physical are not two separate things. Your emotions are physical processes. They're just so small that we can't see what it looks like in your brain. So your emotions are going to have detectable physical effects. I mean, just think about the fact that your heart rate goes up if you get really angry or really attracted to somebody or really excited or really nervous. That's an emotion, and it's causing things that you can detect to happen. And it's happening on a pretty important organ, your heart. It is demonstrated science that your emotions can affect your quote unquote physical body, because your emotions are happening in your physical body.
An actual problem. But for us, we have experienced a lot of healing our hearts and our emotions and past traumas. And that's what we started the conversation about today, in the hopes that if any of you are experiencing some of the things that we went through, and you have met with every doctor and you've tried every route and nobody can really come up with an answer, it's possible that what's happening is actually an emotional pain, not a physical one. So that's what we're going to start the conversation about today. I really hope that it blesses you and that you find something in it that is helpful.
Here's the thing. Just because someone has been to medical providers and been unable to get a satisfactory resolution to their problem, that doesn't give you the right to then go and scam them with your bullshit. Most of the time, almost all the time, this podcast episode is free to listen to, sure, but they don't work for free, okay? They charge a lot of money, and let me tell you, insurance doesn't pay for that shit. You know why? Because it doesn't work. If it worked, insurance would pay for it, because your insurance wants you to do better so that they don't have to pay for more shit. So I don't understand why these bullshit scam practitioners get a pass on being in it for just the money when they have like virtually no expenses with their practice. So it's all pure profit pretty much. I don't understand why they get a pass on it, but every time anything monetary happens in a medical or pharmaceutical setting, it's like, and it's like, okay, well, your energy healer charges you per session, right, too? Why don't they do it for free, huh? And they don't even have any expenses. They don't have to pay for actual equipment or actual testing of their shit. Even if the current medical establishment had 95% of their daily activities consist of tossing puppies into puppy shredders, that would not prove that these scam treatments work. Do you understand that? That doesn't, just because one treatment type can't help you, that does not then prove that another type works. So let's just be very clear with that. And no, it's not harmless going to these scam practitioners, because they charge people a lot of money for stuff that is objectively bullshit. And the other thing is, I'm sure, Rachel is like, oh yeah, well, I'm just talking about like, with ordinary woo-woo shit. I don't mean if you have an actual problem, then you should go to an energy healer. But not everyone knows that. Okay? Not everyone thinks that way. There are going to be people who go to these fucking shameless charlatans with real problems. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
And this is my conversation with my friend Kimberly Lucas. Hi, I'm Rachel Hollis, and this is my podcast. I spend so many hours of every single week reading and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and trying to find
and then just regurgitating them back to you, because that's kind of all she does.
out as much as I can about the world around me. And that's what we do on this show. We talk about everything, life and how to be an entrepreneur. What happened to dinosaurs?
What happened to dinosaurs? What happened to dinosaurs? What happened to dinosaurs? What happened to dinosaurs?
What's the best recipe for fried chicken? What's the best plan for intermittent fasting? What's going on with our inner child? How's therapy working out for you? Whatever it is my guests are into, I want to unpack it so that we can all understand. These are conversations. This is information for the curious. This is the Rachel Hollis Podcast. Will you explain to me how you were feeling something in your throat and then you balanced it for yourself?
Yes. As we were about to start this, I started coughing and I could feel like right now, they're wanting me to give an example. That's why. So they're using my body.
Got it.
Oh, yeah. Throat chakra, definitely coming up. So when we have emotions in our body, trapped within our 7 centers, our chakras, mine in particular, what's happening right now in my throat chakra. And there's an emotion in there. And so as we're starting this, I asked Rachel, let me just balance myself real quick because something's in my throat. I'm coughing. It just doesn't feel clear. And as I was balancing myself, I'm still trying to figure out what it is, but I think they wanted me to save it for the podcast. I'm going through my chakras and there's fear in my throat chakra. And it's towards a female, but it's my present self. So I'm doing this through muscle testing. It's off-body muscle testing. Anyone can do it. And your body, it knows how to heal itself. You just have to talk to it.
Right.
It knows everything. You just have to talk to it. So right now I'm talking to my body. She's telling me what's going on. And she's telling me I have fear speaking my truth to a female. So now we need to be specific. Okay, is it a family member? She says no. Is it a friend? I get yes. Is it one of my friends? Yes. Is it Rachel? No.
Oh my God, just ask her out already. Jesus. Like, God. This is so stupid. Like, okay, how about you just go into all the hospitals and just, tell all the COVID patients, your body knows how to heal itself. It's obviously your throat chakra. Like, oh God. Except no, I'm going to guess and I'm going to hope that she would be like, oh, well, you obviously have to go to the hospital because why? Because this is a real problem that requires real treatment that works.
Good. Like, well, you can be scared if you want.
Is it my higher self? Is it myself? No.
So what you guys can't see is that Kimberly's sitting here and she's actually doing, I think
muscle testing.
I think you showed this in our first podcast together. You actually showed what this looked like, which is available on YouTube.
Did we show
Yeah, I think I definitely, you can see you doing it in the video.
Well, and if not, there's, on YouTube, they'll teach you how to do muscle testing. Just type in self muscle testing and they'll teach you how to do self muscle testing.
Yeah. I think it's funny because they've had a lot of different healers or is it kinesiology? Yeah, I've had things like that done. And I feel like I get the most insight if I can just sit and be quiet with myself. Sometimes trying to do muscle testing or things like that, then the perfection, I'm like, I'm doing this wrong, or when it's like
not for
applied kinesiology where you do the muscle testing, it's bullshit. It's the same kind of thing that happens with a Ouija board. It's you're doing that, and most of the time you are subconsciously moving your whatever limb or whatever it is to get the right answer, quote unquote. That's the way it is. But guess what? They don't find that out because they don't ever try to do it in a way. They don't ever try to test their actual results. And if you even suggest that they do like a controlled trial of this, they're like, oh no, it doesn't work when you do it in a trial. Okay, well maybe it doesn't work at all then. Anything that doesn't work under a controlled setting, that's the point of doing it in a controlled setting. That's the point of placebo controls, is because you want to find out, does it actually work, or am I subconsciously influencing the results? Because I don't want to approve something that people are going to charge other people for if it doesn't actually work and it was just me. It's like, it's not that it doesn't work under a controlled setting. It just doesn't work. It's kind of like when I'm skiing with someone and they're like, oh, I'm a good skier, I just can't ski moguls. And I'm like, no, you can't ski and the moguls prove it.
everyone.
Yeah, if I could just sit and be quiet, I can usually figure out what's going on.
And if you just sit and quiet and just feel,
yeah,
it's the very first thing that surfaces.
Right.
It's the very first thing. That's our intuition. It's getting our attention. The very first thing that surfaces, that's what's going on.
Okay, that feels like a really good piece of advice for people listening, because I think one of the questions I get a ton, and I know you get a ton, is women especially not understanding how to be in touch with their intuition, how to listen to that gut. Because I actually had someone ask this question recently. They called into the hotline on the podcast and they were like, wait, is it the first thing I think, or is it then later when I talk myself out of that thing, is that the intuition? I was like, oh, bless.
This is what I love to teach. And the intuition is the very first thing that you feel, the very first thing. And then the ego will try to come in and try to flip it.
Can we explain, okay, we're going to come back to this conversation, but can we explain the ego really quickly? Because I find myself referencing a lot, and I don't know that I have the language to properly, I think that when people hear ego, they think egotistical, but that's not what we mean.
Ego is separation. So anytime we feel separate from something or someone, or if we feel separate from the universe, feel separate from God, feel separate, ego's very simple, is separation.
Isn't, to some extent though, it's like, it's how we perceive ourselves to be versus what we actually are. Or I see clearly what you mean by separation, because I think of like separation from your true self.
Correct.
But in a way, like if someone's listening to this and they have no spiritual knowledge, they haven't been on this journey at all, I would sort of describe it as it's like who you think you are, who the world thinks you are, who you believe you're supposed to be.
Correct.
Instead of like who God made you to be, this like being, I you guys can't see me, but I'm like holding my hands over my like solar plexus and my stomach, because that's where I feel like our intuition and our true self lies.
This is so stupid. Like, this is just a waste of time that people are getting. Like, it's just a waste. Like, what are you talking about? Like, imagine having like the impulse or intuition. You're not the only person who has intuitions. You're not special for having them. Everybody has that. That's a human experience, is like you might see you're probably just evaluating several factors without thinking about it. and you're coming to a conclusion that's right most of the time. Everybody has that. It's just not everybody spends this much time navel gazing about it and being like, oh, well, like, who am I? Like, Jesus Christ, get yourself together. Like, get a grip.
So when we say ego, we're like, oh, you're trying to please a version of you that's not actually true and authentic.
Exactly. Yeah. And the ego is also a protective mechanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's honestly, I think, on my own spiritual journey, one of the most important questions I learned to ask myself is like, is this my ego talking? And gotta tell you, 99.9% of the time, it is. It is ego. It's like
I feel like this concept is from like old school, like psychoanalysis, like Freudian psychology. Like it's been like I don't understand why people feel the need to make it this complicated. Like you're one person. You don't have multiple beings, okay? Like you are your body, you are your mind, you are your brain, okay? Just understand that. Like, wow, I can't imagine taking this long, thinking about like, oh, who am I? Is this my like, what the fuck? Jesus, like, get a grip.
A really big practice to learn to step away from it.
Yes, and a simple, especially if someone is so new, what is my intuition? What is my ego? Because it can become very confusing, is if you're in a dilemma in life and you need to make a choice, to know what is coming from a place of truth, your intuition, a great question to ask yourself, will it serve my highest good to ... fill in the blank. The very first thing you hear is your intuition.
Yeah, that's good.
So will it serve my highest good? And then fill in the blank. Knowing what's going to serve your highest good, that is the intuition.
So I'm going to go with this little caveat here that they're adding in. It's one of those ways that they weasel out of their little like absolute beliefs. See, because they're basically implying here that the best choice for you is always going to be your intuition. Well, I would assert that it's not, but I bet they would say, oh, but see, that wasn't your intuition. That was actually your ego. What actually happened is you must have had a thought before that, but you're just misidentifying what was your intuition. And furthermore, I'm sorry, but a lot of decisions are better when you think about them for a good amount of time. Okay? But I can see how making a decision without considering any evidence or counter arguments would be very appealing to this type of person. It's such a waste of time. It's such a waste of money. It wastes people's lives. It wastes their resources. It's opportunity costs where they could have been getting real help with real treatment with like shit. Like it's all this shit. It's like, okay, girl, Kimberly, how do you know that? And guess what? When you ask them that, they get offended. If you ask me that about a medical question, I'm going to tell you that I've done a lot of research on it. I did a lot of coursework on it. That's how I know, that's my expert opinion. Because I understand that it's valid to want to know, like, how does someone know what they're just spouting off? Like, how do you know that the ego exists? How do you know your intuition's always going to be right? You don't know that. It's just what you're calling your intuition because you want to be right. It's confirmation bias. It's so stupid.
It served my highest good to agree to do this thing.
What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Serve my highest
Correct.
good to take this job. Well, it served
Correct.
my highest good. You do this when I'm like, where should we go get coffee? And you're like, I think it's one of my favorite things.
Well, I think what would serve your highest good would be to make coffee at home.
To sort of behold as your friend is how you, at least from my perspective, it seems like you really check in with that intuition for everything.
Everything.
Now, did you grow up that way?
So I've always had a strong intuition. I just never knew the extent of it.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Because it's not possible to have like a sense about something and not notice it. You always notice it. You have to actively suppress it if you don't want to like take it into account. Like, so I don't like, what does that mean having a strong, everybody has like an intuition. That is a universal human experience. You're not special for it. It's just you think that you are like super powered or something, but really like you just say really obvious shit probably, or you say really vague shit in a way that sounds very convincing to people, or that makes people feel good about themselves. And but like you're not telling them any information. That's all it is. This is so dumb.
Until I took my first course called the Walla Method, and that's what really got me into what I'm doing now on the spiritual side. I never knew the strength of my intuition until I started really tapping into healing my trauma.
Until you really started tapping into confirmation bias. That's all it is. It's just these people don't understand that like there are other explanations for what they're observing and that those explanations don't require you to believe in like some nebulous poly-religious spirit realm.
And healing my body, because my body was in so much pain. I had all these stomach issues, thyroid issues, acne, UTIs, like you name it. And no one could figure out what was happening until I took this course called the Walla Method, and it started teaching me that there's trapped emotions in the body. That the trapped emotions in our body, if you don't address them, they will manifest into something physical to get your attention.
Yes.
And what strengthened my intuition is the more I started working on myself, healing myself, I started tapping deeper within myself.
Yes.
So I was no longer separate. I started becoming more one with myself.
Right. It's like, I'm just...
How do you become one with yourself? What does that mean? It's so stupid. Because like, okay. She's like, number one, it pisses me off that she's talking about healing trauma when she's clearly completely unqualified for that. It's like those, she had UTI, acne. It's like, okay, those are being a person, especially if you were talking about being younger. So sounds like you were a teenager. And yeah, teenagers have a lot of feelings. Like I don't know. I don't know why you think that everything that happens to you is so unique, but it's not. And I guarantee you this tapping into it is just noticing things. It's kind of like these people who think that they always look at the clock at 11:11, and it's like, no, you're just noticing every time you look at the clock and it's 11:11. You probably look at it at many other times and you just don't make a note of it in your head. You just don't even notice. It's this belief in the infallibility of your perception that is so frustrating for me. I don't know. I don't know if it's because, real talk, like I've when I first quit drinking, like I had a psychotic episode. And I think maybe since then that really clarified this for me, where it's like my perception and the information that I'm getting could be wrong. That what I think that I'm seeing, and that it could be wrong. That I could be mistaken, that I could really believe that something is happening. I could really believe that something is there, and it's not. And I'm not saying you gotta have a psychotic episode for that to occur. I'm saying that we are very, very good at interpreting things in ways that line up with what we want to be true, or with what we very, very strongly believe is true. We're really, really good at twisting things, at ignoring certain things, or just, focusing only on those things. We're really, really dangerously good at it. We're very good at distorting the interpretation of what's coming in. And you need to understand that about yourself in order to know, hey, this seems like this, but I bet it's not that. I bet I'm just, and she'd probably be like, well, you can't doubt you need to not doubt your intuition. And it's like, no, I need to doubt my intuition because I want to know what's actually real. Because my intuition can be wrong. It's wrong a lot of the time. All the time. Everybody's is. It's just some people are more willing to acknowledge when it was wrong. It's always so frustrating to listen to people like this.
I have this instinct that we really need to speak to those people today that are like at the very beginning of a spiritual journey, or maybe they're just curious, or maybe they have no idea what we're talking about or why they're still listening to this conversation. Yeah. So I will say from myself, I was raised very strictly inside of the church and all of sort of the perceptions that came with that. And I was absolutely taught that anything that I would now perceive to be a spiritual practice or a learning was evil, was from the devil. Mm-hmm. So I was raised to believe like if someone had intuition, if someone was a psychic, if someone practiced yoga or talked about chakras, basically in our church, anything that wasn't our church was evil. Mm-hmm. And that, if you're raised in that long enough, that's ingrained in you for a very long time. And so until I was an adult, I remember being an adult. This sounds so stupid what I'm about to say, but it's true. Being a grown adult. And I remember that I had 3 boys. So this is, Ford was a baby. So it's got to be 9 years ago. So not like I was 30 years old. Yeah. Okay. Going to a Halloween party in our neighborhood, and there was a tarot card reader there. And being like, I'm going to get my tarot read. And feeling like I was doing the naughtiest thing, and that probably I was going to be possessed by a demon because I was doing tarot. And it was so crazy. Like I did it sort of as like a gimmick. Yeah. And then there were just a couple things that she said that I was like, oh, wow.
It's funny because I'm very anti-tarot card reading as well, because I just don't think that you should charge people for stuff that you don't actually know. You shouldn't charge people to give them information that it's impossible for you to have. But it's funny hearing her reject tarot because it'll be, because it's from the devil. It's so weird to me. It's so different because I'm against tarot because I think it's a big scam. I'm against tarot for the same reason that I'm against scam medicine. I just think that you shouldn't charge people money for things that are impossible. It's really easy to do cold reading. Is cold reading sometimes creepy with how accurate it can be? Yeah, you can demonstrate how you can freak people out by doing cold reading. I don't know. It's just so weird because it's like, oh, okay, so you're afraid of it because you do think that tarot cards have magic and they have actual demons powering them or whatever. No, against tarot, not because they're from the devil, because I don't think the devil is real either. I just think they're a scam. So weird. It's so weird how she's like, oh, they're so, magical powers or whatever. Ugh.
Really insightful. And that's cold reading. Is they'll say things that sound very specific and like they couldn't possibly know it. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna notice the hits that they get and you're gonna ignore the misses. You'll ignore like all these wrong guesses they put out, and then you'll latch on the ones they get correct. And guess what? Every guess that they get correct, they're gonna like go with that. And they're probably also watching your body language. I know it sounds cheesy, but that was really like I did it and it didn't change my belief system about God, and I wasn't struck down, and I wasn't demon possessed. Yeah. And it was just little bits like that.
Yeah, that's because it's not real.
So glad you brought this up, Rachel, because I work with a lot of individuals with this and how they grew up on a very strict religion, and they're terrified. And how I help guide them, it's not me helping,
is by giving them new bullshit to believe.
I'm assisting guiding them, is that if something doesn't feel good, if something doesn't feel right, like something feels off, don't go there.
Yeah.
But if it feels light.
Wow, that's a great insight.
And if it brings you joy and it just feels it feels good. That's God.
Yeah. The lightness,
It's
like
the
you
light.
just said, that is so real. It's like your body, it's like you've been holding a boulder and it comes off your shoulders. When I have had experiences, even doing meditation or prayer or different things, I know that I'm most connected when I have that feeling, that sense of like pressure is off my body.
Yeah, the light.
Yeah.
feeling.
And I love in our conversation coming back to again and again, feeling. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? Because I think that's a really important intuitive piece for people to hear as well. Your body always knows. It knows. Like you're walking into, your mother-in-law's house and everything about your body sort of shutting down or whatever. But we force ourselves into these situations because that's what, good girls are supposed to do. And it's like you're breaking a covenant with your own spirit because you keep putting yourself in situations to please other people that are hurting you. And you're denying that intuitive self. So it was only through having experience.
You have to go through some difficult experiences in life, I guess you could just not see any of your family or whatever, but I wouldn't recommend it.
A little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more that I really started to understand that God was so much bigger, like
so
times
much bigger.
a gajillion than I was raised to believe. Yeah. And I think on some level, going back all the way, a lot of churches and a lot of religions want to separate us from our intuition.
Separate?
Yeah, right. Because it's like, if you can trust your own inner wisdom, then you don't need to rely on God.
Yeah, that's not really a mind-blowing insight. That's why, for the longest time, the laity wasn't allowed to read the Bible. Well, that and the fact that if you actually read the Bible, it's kind of an atheist factory.
Truth is that inner wisdom is God.
It is God.
And that's what we're missing. We at least if you were raised how I was raised, we've lost that thing.
Yes, and the intuition is our guidance system. It's how God can communicate to us to keep us safe in life because life isn't easy.
Yeah.
And God knows that.
Yeah.
And that's why we were created with this intuition, this guidance system, so God could direct us. It's a compass.
Yeah.
I guess you have to be quasi-religious to get this or something. Because to me, it's just so batshit crazy to think that there's someone out there. But I guess that's why people keep turning to this, is because they think that the world is so scary and whatever, and they want there to be someone out there who's looking out for them, and they want to be sure that they're doing the right thing, so they just make this stuff up, to put some parental figure in place on stuff that they're just deciding, but it scares them to think that they're deciding it and that there's no one keeping track or checking their work. Which, whatever, do what you need to do to cope, but I wish you wouldn't infect other people with your, theological crutch.
In the body. This was something we really wanted to talk about today because you and I both have experience with this really extensively I want to say it very clearly. If you're listening to this, I want you to consider, what if the pain you feel in your body, any of it, the toothache, the earache, the constant headaches, the lower back pain, the problems with your ankles, any pain in your body, what if it is emotional instead of physical?
And this is the big piece that Rachel and I wanted to talk about, is that...
Or what if it's just a cavity?
We're so much more than just a physical body.
Really? Because from here, it looks like you're exactly a physical body.
So much more. We just have never been taught it.
Right.
How do you know that?
And majority of the clients that I see, their pain, I want to say 90% of it is all emotional.
Mm-hmm.
All emotional.
Right.
How do you know that? And how can you possibly be qualified to make a diagnosis?
And it's from trauma that was never healed or trauma that's been passed down. And it's very important, just when you have pain, just sit with it. Don't run from it. Just stay curious and just feel. Because that pain on the body also has its own consciousness. And so if you can just feel it.
my pain has its own consciousness. So, does it have a name?
What is the message? All pain is just a messenger. It's just it's knocking on the door, trying to get our attention that there's something more happening.
Yeah. The first time I experienced this, and I've written about this and I've talked about this, but I had vertigo really bad for over a year. And I tried everything. I saw every doctor. I had brain scans done. I thought I had a brain tumor. This constant feeling.
Is she... Wait. Is she now like not with Dr. Amen anymore? Also, like, that is like textbook vertigo. Vertigo is psychiatric a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's caused by stress. I'm sorry no one told you that, but yeah, like vertigo can be caused by your ears, it can be caused by your eyes, and if it's not caused by either of those, then it's probably being caused by some kind of psychiatric or mental health, stress, anxiety. It's probably one of those things if it's not actually happening in your eyes or your ears. It's not, you don't own emotions. Like medical science also deals with that.
Couldn't walk straight, feeling dizzy, nauseous, the whole thing. And I went to this, I don't remember what he was called. He had like a ponytail and his office was filled with crystals. And this was about the time that same time period as like the tarot card thing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is evil. Like, this man has crystals in his office. I'm doing some, but I was so desperate. If that guy was like, I'll heal you with the blood of a spring chicken, I would be like, okay, let's make a ritual sacrifice. Let's go.
See what I mean? That's what I was talking about. That's what I'm talking about, where it's like, they give these people, these crystal healers or whatever, they prey on people who are desperate because the medical establishment didn't have an answer for them. I'm not saying the medical establishment always does. I'm saying that just because the medical establishment doesn't mean that these people do, and doesn't make what they're doing anything less than preying on people who are desperate, and that there's just not an answer for them yet. And you're taking advantage of them with your shit that doesn't work.
I'm so desperate. And he sat with me for 2 hours and just listened to me talk.
And then he charged you how much? Because I'm guessing that wasn't free. So I'm gonna guess that maybe he charged you by the hour.
Just asking questions, listen to me talk, and I just kept rambling, and all of a sudden he was like, "Stop! I know what's wrong." And basically explained to me like, oh, this is not physical in any way. Mm-hmm. This is emotional. Mm-hmm. He's like, this whole time you've been talking, you're talking about feeling out of control. And he's like, I don't know if you realize how many times your hands have made the motion of like flipping in circles. And that's also what you're describing is happening in your head. And he my brain, because I felt the rightness of that. Mm-hmm. I had never had a doctor's appointment like that. But I knew in my soul that what he was saying was true. And I swear to you, by the time I got back to my car, my vertigo had dissipated by half after having it for a year.
Isn't that wild?
It was wild. And it was gone within a week.
Yeah.
Vertigo usually comes and goes, though. Like, it's usually not a constant at a stable level all the time. And I don't know, I don't know why it was never suggested to her that it could be the result of like stress, because that is like the third cause when you look up vertigo in any medical text.
Worked with a lady who had really bad vertigo, and what was the message for her is that she was bending backwards for others.
Oh, yeah.
And then God kept telling her, you need to bend forward for yourself.
Ooh.
It will put your crystals back in alignment in your ears.
I needed to hear that too. I have a weird thing. I don't think I've ever talked to you about this.
I just want to quickly say here, the crystals in your ears thing that's frequently a cause of vertigo, is the crystals in your ears being that's how you sense that your head is like tilted, or that you're spinning or whatever, there's fluid in your inner ear. And there are little hairs in there that detect the level of the fluid. And so when your head's like tilted this way, like it feels like the fluid going up like this way. And sometimes crystals can form in there and they kind of impede the flow, or they give mistaken sensations to the little hairs that detect it. And there's I forget what the name of the maneuver is, but there's a standard medical practice that is where there's a maneuver where you, I think you turn your head. Don't quote me on this. Don't try this. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the description. But it's where it's something to the effect of like turning your head like this, and you hold it there for like 30 seconds, and then you quickly like drop back flat on like the exam table or on your bed or whatever, and you hold it there, like similarly twisting your head or whatever, and yeah, like that will move the crystals out of the way, the ones that are like causing you to mistakenly perceive motion or spinning or whatever. Like it'll jostle those out of the way. Like that's a standard medical practice. The crystals in your ear are not the same as like crystals. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like something that's crystallized in the fluid in your inner ear. But yeah, I mean, that's a standard thing that you could do. And I bet it would be a lot cheaper to get that done by a doctor than to get it done by this crystal muncher.
If I do something where my head goes back and upset, I get the vertigo back.
Yeah, it's like, don't bend backwards.
Yeah, that's because it's a medical problem, and it is a physical problem then, girl. It's that's textbook vertigo. And you can fix it by doing the little reset thing. But like a lot of people it's not because it symbolizes that you're bending over backwards for what the fuck? It's just because when you bend backward, like that's putting the crystals back in the place that is like making you perceive the vertigo. Like it's so simple. Like, I don't know why you have to make it so complicated, but I'll tell you why you make it so complicated. Because how are you going to keep a client coming back for more appointments and listening to more of your bullshit that you charge them for if you make them think that it's just something simple, like it actually is.
Stand forward.
Right. In like, when I do yoga and stuff, when we have to do like the bridge or the wheel or whatever, I'm like, I'm sitting this one out. So I was like, ooh, I needed to hear that. That was a good
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It's not wild though. Like, have you ever seen fluid sloshing in a bathtub? Like, it's because you are going back and the way that you perceive that your head is tilting or rotating is the level of a fluid that sloshes in your inner ear. Okay, and so clearly when you're leaning back, those crystals are blocking the flow, and that's why you're getting vertigo. Like it's not even that complicated of an explanation. Like I think everyone can understand that. Like when you slosh a fluid, see, and then if I put a bunch of chunks of like some crystal or whatever in there, the fluid won't be able to, and there'll probably be a certain way I can slosh it where it'll get it out of the way. Like it's very simple. It's very easy to understand. So I don't know why that's wild. She actually thinks that it's because her whatever is getting mad at her because when she bends backwards, that means you're bending over backwards for people. You need to bend forward for yourself. What the fuck? Like oh my God. I didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about.
If someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, sure, I don't get it. Like, explain to me how I can even figure out, besides sitting with it. And let's sit on that for a second. It definitely inside of American culture, we take medicine for everything. And I didn't really understand this until I started dating a European who was like, whoa, this is wild. Like how much ibuprofen you take, how much.
Sample size 2. So we're just generalizing all Americans and all Europeans, right? I mean, it might be broadly true. I do think people take too much pain reliever and stuff. It's probably because our laws allow pharmaceutical companies to do direct to consumer advertising. And they've just been allowed to kind of unrestrainedly market in the United States, which is not great. But I will say that it still is just funny how she's like, oh, I've met one European and now I know the trend of everything over there. Like, of course that's what of course you just are pulling that out of your ass. Like, and I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm saying that her rationale for her data is wrong. Like, wow. Okay. Well, when I make thumbnails, I usually use Adobe Spark, okay? But when I talked to Sid and I asked, Sid Dwyer, when I talked to Sid and I asked him what he uses, he said he uses Photoshop. So therefore, Americans use Adobe Spark to make thumbnails and Australians use Photoshop. See, that's the exact same as what Rachel just did. Very, very, very annoying. It's like, fine if you don't understand how data works and shit, like, and you're not curious about any answers to questions other than what you already think the answer is, and whatever's like the simplest and makes you feel good, like makes you feel better, makes you feel like the world is more safe or something, whatever. But like, don't come out here and scam other people for this shit, because it can get dangerous really fast. Like, this is do you know how bad that is for your gut? Do you understand? Yeah, it is. Not enough people are really aware of the fact that it's not good to be taking that shit all the time. It's not good. See, most pharmacists are very against taking a lot of medication unless it's absolutely necessary. I mean, maybe that's like a side effect of knowing the side effects. But I also think that the impression that Americans take a lot of medications is also partially because lifestyle factors are so bad here, and there's so much, there's such a high rate of sugar consumption, of sedentary lifestyle that can increase the incidence of type 2 diabetes or of heart disease, which, is a really quick way to get put on a lot of medications, So that's not really their fault. That's more like the food supply's fault, and the fact that we are being lied to about the dangers of sugar, for example, all the time. To this day, diabetes organizations are they'll actually stand there and look you straight in the face and say that excessive sugar consumption does not cause diabetes. Yeah, it does. Oh, you people have worms in your brains. The data is in. Stop it. Until I had a different perspective, I was like, well, what do you do when you have a headache? And he's like, I just drink water, I stretch, I get a massage. I try and figure out why I have the headache. I don't. Mm-hmm. So that blew my mind. And I realized how... I mean, a headache, it might go away before an ibuprofen would even kick in. You don't know, unless it's a migraine or something that you get all the time. Yeah, I'm kind of with him on this. Often, I don't sit with the pain because I treat the symptom immediately. I'm like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. Give me a pill to make it go away. So if someone is like, I don't understand what you mean by how do I sit with the pain? I mean, this isn't unique to them though. This is not something that only an energy healer can tell you. This is something that a pharmacist would also tell you, because I would say that, and I'm not talking about if you have chronic pain, that's something completely different. You need to have a regimen and all of that stuff. I'm not talking about chronic pain. I'm talking about just acute little, mild pains or whatever. I always think if you can stand it, then don't take anything for the pain, because you don't want to mute that warning sign that you're getting. And then, if you, for example, if it's, a sore muscle or whatever, you could then aggravate it without even realizing it, because it won't hurt the amount that it should, or even like if it's like generalized like soreness, it can be good to have that soreness just so that you keep in mind that you need to take it a little bit easier on those muscles for however, like for a day or two, so that you don't like forget. I don't know, that's just me. And obviously, like, I'm not talking about like severe pain and I'm not talking about like chronic pain. That's like a totally different thing. You don't need to be reminded about chronic pain. You've heard enough from it.
A little overwhelming, especially when you're in pain like that. It can be so overwhelming. You just want someone just something fix me, right? But within that pain, there's going to be an emotion. So if you can just sink into that pain, the very first thing that surfaces, feel it. Whether it's fear, anger, grief, helplessness, whatever it is just feel it and just stay curious with it. But I think it'd be great for us to give them, the audience, like just examples of why pain manifests where it does.
Right.
So like headaches are a lot, you're too much in your thoughts. You need to get back into your heart.
Right.
So the head is trying to get your attention. Okay, time to get out of the head, get back into your heart.
Yeah.
You're too much in the thoughts.
I'm grabbing this book too.
Yeah.
I do want to reference this. If you're like, I just want to give every level of journey, because I do know that.
I feel like a broken record with this. How do you know that? Also, that doesn't make any sense that my head is trying to tell me something. I am not there. My head has no consciousness separate from me. Like, I am my head. Like, my consciousness is what my brain does. Jesus Christ. My God. Like, maybe if you stop splitting yourself into like 3 little command centers or whatever, maybe then you'll like, you're the one, you say that like we're not at one with ourselves or whatever the hell. You're the one splitting your body into like 15 different things, like different entities with apparently different motives or whatever. I'm trying to tell you that like, actually your body and you and your brain and your mind and whatever, those are all the same thing. So, maybe if you just avail yourself of all the resources that you have within it, like you'll come to a more simple picture that makes more sense. Because if you're having, really negative, really strong emotions, well, that means like there's something going on in your brain. Like we know that neurochemistry is such an important thing that kind of is like a driver of mood. Like that's what's happening. Like it's chemicals in your brain. Therefore, it is easy to see, it is obvious that clearly could have an effect on pain or sensations elsewhere in your body, because I don't know, your brain is kind of the command center for that. Like that's where all the signals for what you want to do and all the integration of the signals coming in, that's where all that processing is happening. So obviously, if there's some kind of chaos going on in there, that certainly could lead to some, shit getting out of whack elsewhere. That's obvious. It's so weird. It's so weird how they don't get this. They think they're just on this like separate profound level, and it's like, no, like I understand it. And furthermore, it's like, how do you know these things? How do you know? And it's always there in the way that they know is always like, oh, well, when I do it for my clients or when I tried it and then I got better. And it's like, well, how do you know that you wouldn't have gotten better anyway? Right. You don't, because you didn't do a placebo-controlled trial, and you didn't do a placebo-controlled trial because you knew that it wouldn't work. You're just getting the result that you want and then assuming that the reason that result occurred is because of the intervention that you did. Well, I mean, good for you. But when you're submitting a new drug application, you're not allowed to do that. And thank God you're not. The world would be a much more dangerous place if that were permitted when you're playing with live ammo like pharmaceuticals. When you're dealing with things that actually do stuff. When you're dealing with things that actually do stuff, you can't just assume that was why it worked. You can't do that. Just this past, I think it was at the beginning of the month, this explosive new publication came out, and it basically showed that a huge amount of Alzheimer's research, not a huge amount of it, but it was like this one paper that had been really set the set the groundwork that a ton of other research had been based on. And it's always been kind of a bugaboo of the pharmaceutical industry that over 99% of the drugs that they bring to clinical trial end up just not working, and they just have to abandon them.
Editing Mac here, just wanted to specify that I'm talking about 99% of drugs that are being studied for Alzheimer's.
And it's they're just how does this keep happening? Why do none of the candidates that we think should be effective, why are they never effective? Yeah, so it turns out that paper, that research that kind of laid the groundwork, supposedly, a bunch of it was fraudulent. It was doctored. It was altered and manipulated to get the result that made sense to the researcher. And now it's come out that it was all bullshit, and we're gonna have to start again from scratch. But you know what? That would never happen in the field of energy healing. There would never be a paper that came out and said, oh my God, we've been wrong about this shit for this long. This is wrong. Because number one, because they don't publish research. And number two, if they did, there would never be any corrections, because they have absolutely no curiosity about whether what they're doing and what they're practicing on real patients is real or not. Because, they just, they're like, oh, well, and it got better, therefore it works. Dangerous. Very, very dangerous thinking. Yeah, if that were a valid way to acquire knowledge, I assure you, the pharmaceutical industry would love the fact that they didn't have to use a placebo or randomization or blinding for their results. Okay, that would make it a lot cheaper to do clinical trials. Okay, but you have to do that because it is not a reliable path to truth to just assume that because you did A and X happened, then X happened because of A. You can't do that. You can't do that because you will be wrong a lot of the time.
There's going to be people who are more analytical.
Correct.
So Louise Hay wrote about this pretty extensively in her book, You Can Heal Your Life. And then there's a book I really love called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Siegel. Oh, look, my throat started doing something weird too. The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Siegel. And I really love this. It will talk you through, the opening chapters really talk you through energetically what's in your body, how to heal it through meditation and prayer. And then I love it because the end is I was telling Kimberly, it's like a recipe book. So whatever the index at the end is, ulcers, varicose veins, thrush mouth, throat chakra, whatever you're dealing with, it's in the back, and you can just go right to the page and it'll tell you. So let's look something up.
Okay, that's a great book too.
I will tell you, I told Kimberly this morning, I was feeling frustrated with my partner last night and I got an earache. And I never get earaches. I haven't had an earache since I was a little kid. And this morning I was like, ooh, I want to look up what that means. So in this book, The Secret Language of Your Body, earache says feeling judged or judging others, not listening to your own insight or wisdom, not wanting to hear what's being said, trying to block other people out, feeling like others want to control you, blame, frustration, anger, misunderstanding, arguments. And I was like, well, fine.
Isn't that wild?
Interesting that streptococcus was never on that list. What the fuck? Oh my God. Okay. once again, how do you know that? How does that author know that? And how do you know the difference between one of the earaches that is safe to treat with this woo-woo shit and a real actual problem that needs to go to urgent care? Because that's what this is. It's just privilege, okay? It's because Rachel's rich and, doesn't have any serious chronic conditions, okay? And she can afford to eat healthy and work out and whatever the hell. And she doesn't have any real problems that, she has to deal with. And so she can afford to waste money on these products that don't do anything and waste time learning that an earache, it's because you're not listening. See how much sense that makes? And you get to live in your little bubble where everything makes sense and everything has an answer and everything is for sure 100%. And all you got to do is grind up some ginger root and, boil it with your tea. And that just makes your chakras get all the betters. Okay, like where you have all the answers. All you got to do is look in your little cookbook because you don't have any real problems that you have to deal with. Even though I'm sure if you were actually sick and you were like very, very, very critically sick, I have the slightest feeling that you would go to the hospital instead of. But that's so weird. Like, why wouldn't you try to put your chakras back in order? Because if you're so sick that you need to go to the hospital, it seems like your chakras must be really out of line. Well, why don't you fix it then? I thought your body knew how to heal itself. Right. So it's because you don't have any real problems and you are rich, you don't have to work, and you don't have to work a lot of hours. I know you do, but you don't have to. And yeah, that's all it is. It's privilege. And you can afford to waste your money on this shit too. It's so disgusting. It's so disgusting. And you're like, oh yeah, well, like, look how great I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, you're doing great because you're rich. And so you can afford, all the healthy things. You can afford to live in places with clean water and clean air and, fresh food and all that nonsense. It's pretty unlikely that anyone's going to have a problem serious enough that you can't, just spit in the face of medical science that has gotten you to this point and just pretend like your method of inquiry is at all remotely valid, because that's what happens when you're rich and you have privilege. It's that you can just be so fucking wrong about everything and it won't matter for you because you just have so many safety systems below you. You have so many safety nets. That you could probably be wrong for the next 15 years uninterrupted and you'd still be falling through more safety nets. The rest of us would be off the cliff splat like Wile E. Coyote style. But you're good. You're rich enough that you don't need to know the truth. Gotcha.
Read it. Basically, I'll read and I'm like, oh, I see how this thing was happening. And I just feel like even you being willing to consider that it's an emotion instead of a physical ailment is so powerful.
Your emotions are physical. If you look at just about any condition, like any symptom on any legitimate medical resource, I guarantee you for like half of them, stress, anxiety, all of those will be potential causes listed. So again, this is not, you don't own this.
It's insane. I mean, that's what healed my whole body is when I started addressing the emotions. And I've worked with.
How do you know your body wouldn't have gotten better on its own? That's the problem with this shit. Is I'm not saying that you didn't have all these problems beforehand and then you stopped having them after, but how do you know that you wouldn't have gotten better without doing any of that shit? You don't. Because you don't actually care if your beliefs are true.
Client after client, patient after patient on this, and like lower back pain. I see that a lot in men. It's very common in men.
That one's like, that's a really famous Louise Hay one. Lower back pain is lack, scarcity.
And not feeling supported.
Yes.
So if you don't feel supported, what's going to give out? Your back.
Or maybe it's that people spend so much time sitting that their hip flexors get shortened, which makes your psoas muscle and other low back muscles have to work harder. And so, they get tired and tight, and that manifests as pain. There, I used your little word for you. It's called manifest. Doesn't that sound more simple than coming up with some weird, it's almost like this Freudian analysis of pain. And it's I don't really think you need to think about this hard. I think it's pretty, it kind of seems like the cause is pretty obvious here. It's so dumb. Why are you don't need to think about this shit that hard. Why are we coming up with more complicated answers to things that are obvious?
Ah, that's so real.
It's so real.
And
no, it really isn't.
Worked with me a ton on my left ankle. I had a lot of problems with my ankle, and that was feeling like I was on the wrong path.
Yep.
And the left side of your body is your feminine energy.
Not trusting your
intuition,
your feminine energy.
You've worked with me.
How do you know that? How do you know the left side is I want to know. How do you know that? Where does it, do you just make this shit up? Did someone make this up and put it in a book? And then you read that book? Where, and how did they know that? What is this based on? Furthermore, guys, see, Rachel had a problem with her left ankle. And you see, it got better. So, as we all know, no one has ever had a problem with their left ankle and it just got better. Everybody knows that when you start having problems with your left ankle, it's just an irreversible slide down the toilet and then you die. How you don't know that it might have gotten better on its own, and it's not harmless because you are making people think in these magical ways. And I really do think they are dangerous ways of thinking. And if nothing else, you're scamming people. You're preventing them from going and seeking actual things that might be helpful. You're preventing these low back patients from, going to see a physical therapist. Not every medical treatment involves taking a drug. In fact, most of them probably shouldn't. Okay, but there's things like going to see a therapist, going to a psychologist. There's physical therapy. Physical therapy is huge. Physical therapy can help so many things, such as low back pain. The Epley maneuver, that's what I was trying to remember with the crystals in the ear. The Epley maneuver, very effective, doesn't require any drugs. And maybe we prescribe a lot of drugs for heart health or whatever, but again, the ideal would be to do more cardio if you can. I don't know. You get it.
Ton on my jaw and my throat chakra, which was all day long. I'm guessing a lot of women have throat chakra stuff from not being able to speak their truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really, so men, it's really common in their low back. Women is a lot in the neck. The neck, the shoulders, the traps, not being able to speak your truth, not being able to express yourself. And if you're in a relationship or in a situation where you can't express yourself, or even when you were a child that wasn't healed, it will manifest into tightness in the neck, sore throat, coughs, colds, neck tension, shoulder tension, all of it.
Right.
How do you know that? Furthermore, isn't it pretty obvious that if you have a lot of anxiety, you're going to be doing this a lot more? And okay, granted, right? You kind of hunch a little more. You're trying to close yourself off. is it not possible then that doing that all the time could make these muscles tight, could make these muscles sore, could cause them to actually shorten and kind of freeze that position permanently? So why are we talking about throat chakras? There's already a very simple explanation. Anxiety, tension, stress. It's so stupid and it's so frustrating. And it's I get that you feel like there's too much uncertainty and it scares you. And you're just desperate to feel like you have all the answers. But just because you want to have the answers doesn't mean that you can just make them up. I know that it is stressful and it's hard to accept it when you don't have all the answers and there's no answer available. But that is not an excuse to just make something up like what you're doing. That's what this is. This is an exercise in just pretending like uncertainty isn't there because you can't handle it, because you can't handle it.
I'm thinking too, in going on this journey myself and learning so much, it's really helped me to be a better mom because I am aware now when the kids are having pain to go deeper. So I had this happen with one of my sons, I don't know, a month ago. He had been in great health and woke up the next morning and was just so sick to his stomach. I'm like, does he have a 24-hour flu? Does he have COVID?
24-hour flu is not real. Are you thinking of food poisoning?
I don't know what's going on. And I just had this instinct because I was like, he was great yesterday. And so I said, I gave him wellness formula, which is my favorite. Do you ever take wellness formula?
I don't.
Oh, you probably don't because you're so zen with the world you never get. Wellness formula is this it's a supplement that's garlic. It's a million things.
Everything.
It's so good. It tastes terrible. And I swear by it. So whenever my kids are feeling a little iffy or if we've been kind of exposed to a lot of germs, I'll just take some wellness. So I'm I'm going to give them wellness. But I just had this instinct and I was like, hey, what's going on? Let's just talk. Talking. And then in the conversation, I found out something that was really bothering him emotionally and that was making him feel really anxious and unsure. And I was like, buddy, sometimes our emotions will make our body feel a certain way. So I was guiding him through this and he's a teenager. So he's like, okay, mom. But we talked through a bunch of stuff and I swear to you within hours, he had a fever, he had chills, he had the whole thing. Yep. His whole body was expressing to me that he had the flu. And within a few hours, 100% health again. It was he
Good
just
job,
needed
Rachel.
That happens with teenagers all the time. Sometimes they eat something and it doesn't agree with them. And that happened to me a couple of times in high school, where I don't know if I ate something weird the day before or what, but I was throwing up, fever, chills, all that. And I really wanted, it sucked because my mom thought that I was trying to get out of going to school, which was ridiculous because I had perfect attendance. Once I threw up, she was like, oh. By the afternoon, I was completely fine. That's kind of how it works. If you have food poisoning or something, you're gonna have fever, chills, vomiting kind of thing going on. Not always. A lot of times food poisoning is a lot more serious and it goes on for a very long time. But if it's something more quick and acute that your body's able to clear out, it can be like that. And here's the thing again, what am I gonna say? How do you know that he wouldn't have gotten better even if you didn't have that discussion? What are we saying? Are you saying that if you didn't have that discussion, this would have just continued until you had that discussion? Is that really what you're proposing? So eventually he would just die because you didn't find out what the emotion was? You just die of emaciation? Is that what you're saying? Of course not. Of course not. It's just answers that make your little rich white lady brain feel better.
Talk about how he was feeling. And I think that's really hard for a teenage boy because he's like, I'm not supposed to be feeling this way.
Yeah.
That was a big lesson. So I think it's something really powerful because there's so many moms that listen to this and some dads too, that when we heal these things in ourselves, we can really learn to teach our kids.
That's what I share with all my mom clients, is that if you're not healed within yourself, it's going to reflect externally. So what we feel internally will always reflect externally. So the more you become one with yourself, heal yourself, become back in your body, you're going to notice a shift in your own children. Mm-hmm. It is huge.
You said this to me once when I was like, oh, do you ever work with kids? And you were like, yeah, but honestly, if you want to heal a kid, heal the mom or heal the parent.
Heal the parent.
Yeah, like if the parent.
Wow, groundbreaking. Guys, did you know that when the parent is in a better state of health and a better state of mind, their kids tend to do better? Like, you just blew my mind, lady.
Kids healing, it will trickle down. And I feel like that is so real in our lives.
I feel like that is so obvious. It's just such a, it's always a shame when you see a child and their parent is in perfect health and perfect, mental health and everything, no complaints, and you're just like, wow. If only their parent had some unaddressed, mental health concerns, that child would really be thriving. Like, do they think they're coming up with like groundbreaking shit here? No. Of course, when your parent does better, the kid does better. Jesus Christ. So stupid.
I think too, I never could imagine a world. I look back now and think of like how much medicine I used to take. Like just like ibuprofen and pain pills. Something's got to be like very wrong for me to resort to that, just because I've learned that the pain actually will dissipate. Yeah. If I don't, I just was raised that like you feel.
Oh my God. That's what I've been saying the whole time, Rachel. Maybe the pain will dissipate if you just kind of, deal with it for a little bit. Again, I'm not talking about chronic pain. I'm just talking about like little acute things. Rachel, this feels like you're projecting, okay? Not everybody takes pain medication the way that you do.
The pain, treat it, So that was a huge learning for me, which is so much better for my physical body to not be taking medicine that I don't need unnecessarily.
Well, yeah, I mean, pain medication is never a thing that like you're like supposed to, well, unless you're chronic pain, you're supposed to have like a round the clock thing, and then so that you don't end up getting breakthrough pain. But like I'm talking about like for like acute, like mild shit, like there's never like a recommended amount of pain medication you're supposed to take. You're supposed to take as little of it as you can stand. It's just there's not usually much benefit to it other than the relief of the pain, which can sometimes be a double-edged sword. Well, I guess anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen and naproxen can also be good for the getting swelling to go down, but I'm sure like she's got some kind of it's probably some kind of tea that you can make or whatever, and I'm sure it's the same. Anyway, what I'm saying is she's projecting, and I'm also saying, yeah, it's not great to be taking too much ibuprofen, acetaminophen and stuff. And a lot of people take Tylenol after they drink, which is very upsetting because that is a good way to get liver failure, people.
Just communicating with yourself, and we're becoming very disassociated from ourselves.
When we first started chatting about this idea, I think it's funny too, and I think it's worth saying, like, Kimberly and I were going to get coffee today. We were just like going to be friends to go get coffee.
Yeah, just like your ex-husband, he's always meeting people, and then he was going to be friends with them, but then it became about work.
And then we were texting about, because we're nerds, we were texting about body and whatever, and I'm like, oh, this book, and she's like, oh, this book, and then I was like, oh man, I think, what was it last?
You read books, you nerds.
yesterday. I sent a note and I'm like, dude, will you record a podcast with me? We'll still get coffee, but will you record a podcast? I think we're supposed to talk about this. And one of the things we want to talk about pain in the body, but for a while, we've been talking about this idea that women, so many of the women that I've worked with and that you work with, don't know how to trust themselves, and that they also feel like other people are going to be the answer for what's going on with them. So will you talk about what you found with your clients?
It's what I'm seeing, this common theme is that they're going externally for healing when they need to remember that only you can heal yourself and God.
Right. Okay.
It's very important.
This was a huge, huge, huge lesson for me over the last year, and continues to be. I hope to evolve to a place where I just have this all the time, is that nothing externally is the answer.
Nothing.
It's all in us.
Yes. When I work with my clients,
That is such a privileged point of view, because in order to think that nothing externally can help you or whatever, you basically have to be rich, because you have to be rich enough that you're blind to all the ways in which you rely on others. Because guess what? We're humans. We rely on each other. A human alone, with no resources or anything that were created by the hands of others and no others around, is a dead human. Within days, is a dead human. So it is such a privileged position to think that you just built this all yourself and all you need is yourself. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, sure.
I'm not doing any healing on them. I'm just guiding them to their own
Then stop charging them for it.
self-healing, because only they can heal themselves and only God can heal them.
You're so right, because the thing I loved about you the first time I had a session with you is that you didn't tell me any answers, ever. You never said oh, it's that, if you went to a psychic or something, they'd be like, here's what's coming. You don't do that. You keep asking questions. It's this is exactly how I describe you to people. You are going going to a therapist who's so spiritually aligned that the spiritual is part of the therapy. So you just ask questions to help, at least me, figure out on my own what's going on. It's almost like you're teaching clients how to have intuition. Okay, I just made the connection.
Good job, Rachel.
It's only taken me 2 years. That's what it is.
Yes, I'm teaching them that.
You're just cold reading your clients. You're just cold reading them. And it's very easy to cold read someone when you just ask them questions, because you can make it look like you know everything.
That they can also trust themselves.
Yeah.
But if I tell them the issue, look, it's this. I'll put little nuggets, drop little seeds. But if they don't go through the experience, I'm taking on their responsibility. So
maybe it's that, but maybe it's that when you let them do all the answering, it makes it look like, wow, everything's working so well, and you don't have to take any risks by giving an answer where maybe you say something and they're like, no, that's not true, I never do that, right? So perhaps maybe that's why you let them come up with the answers, because then it looks like you're some fucking brilliant thing.
in order for them to grow this intuition, to trust themselves, they need to take responsibility for their healing.
Yeah, that's so
because
good.
sometimes they put their healing on others, expect these others to heal them. I'm sorry, hate to say this, but they're not going to heal you. Only you are going to heal yourself and the higher self.
Right. And I was telling Kim this morning that the line that the most people have come up to me over the years and said, this line changed my life thousands of times, DMs and emails and letters and stopping me at the airport. still happens today, even though I wrote that book in 2017, which was the line, if you're unhappy, that's on you. And most women will say that when they
Bullshit. That is so offensive.
read it,
That is such a privileged thing to say.
the first feeling they feel is pissed off. There's like, who does this biatch think she is to tell me that the reason I'm unhappy is me? Because they're like, my ex-husband and this and my parents and society and all of these things. And it's not saying, I'm not implying that external circumstances don't contribute to what you go through in life, but that you have to take ownership of your experience. And
That is a privilege. That is because you are privileged AF.
think that was the most powerful lesson I've learned to date. Maybe it's the most powerful lesson I'll
That's because you're fucking rich and privileged.
ever learn, is that however I'm feeling is about what's happening inside of me. It is not ever about an external person, an external situation. It is always like, okay, what if
Do you see how all these scam practices are? It's always about being able to have all the answers and to always be in control. So like now she can always be happy, okay? And she can be sure that she'll always be happy because like nothing else can affect her. Like nothing can make her unable to be happy. Nothing external, okay? So like it's all about having like certainty and like and just like being able to to be able to be completely in control and have all the answers and all this shit, you know? And it's like, okay, well, you know, it's privilege that you get to live in that reality.
I decided that this means? What's my ego's talking here? What is it telling me? It's always inside myself.
And this will go into what we were talking about at the beginning, knowing what is ego. If you're looking externally and blaming the external, you've just now dropped into your ego because that's separation.
Yes.
If you want to know the truth, which it's going to piss you off at first, that's okay. Accept it. If you want to know the truth, get back internally.
Yeah.
Because everything we feel internally will reflect externally.
Right.
And so externally, it's like what you see externally, all it is teaching you something deeper within yourself internally you need to face and heal.
Yes. Fear is not the right word. I think what's really driven me to heal on so many levels is I have these examples in my life of people, we all do, of people who are not doing the healing. And I really do think, disease, the word disease is dis-ease.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't heal these things inside of you, I think they start out as little pokes and prods.
Yes.
And then the pain's a little bit more and it's a little bit more. And then ultimately they can manifest in ways that kill you, that rob you of your.
Wow, you guys. Until now, I didn't know that progressive diseases were a thing. I didn't know that things that could be unaddressed could get worse and then eventually kill you. Wow, Rachel, great insight. Great.
Your life that are so hurtful. And I think of family members I have that have so much anger inside of them.
Yeah.
Like it is eating them alive how angry they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, you live every day of your life. You're in your 70s and you are living every day of your life with this much anger and this much fear. And I'm looking at the physical manifestation in their body.
You can see it.
Oh my gosh.
It's in this one client I worked with, Rachel. She had so much anger in her heart chakra. And it was from a divorce she had 10 years ago. And she came to see me to do my other method, fascial stretch therapy. But when I was working on her, she had this knot in her middle of her back. And she said, it's been here for 10 years and this knot will not go away. The massage, nothing will get this knot away. And then I was like, well, you're pretty pissed off at your ex-husband. And I told her, I was like, we worked with it, but what she came down to is like, if she doesn't forgive him, it will not go away. It's like a stab in the back.
Yeah.
And that's how it manifested.
Oh, wow.
And then once we did our session.
Like, see, you're so close to the answer, which is that you are anxious, aggravated, which is a physical thing because that physically makes you tense up and do this, and your trapezius is getting tight back here. You're getting lower cross syndrome, upper cross syndrome. Like, it's so obvious, like, but like you're just finding the answers in this roundabout way. And yeah, so it's like I agree. Like you need to, like, whatever it is that is making you stressed and anxious, you need to do something about that. And if you're not able to do that through like some kind of therapy or whatever, then you maybe need like some medication or something for it or whatever that can help you work through it. Like that's something that I'm not saying that every doctor will always, because we have a whole problem in this country with medical appointments being way too short and shit. Like doctors have to see like 20 million patients a day. Anyway, but like that is a completely reasonable medical treatment pathway for that, for back pain or whatever from that. And but I would say it's probably not just because she hasn't forgiven her husband. It's probably don't tell her to forgive her husband, okay? You don't have to forgive anybody, okay? You don't have to forgive anybody. No one is owed your forgiveness, especially if they've wronged you and given you no reason to ever forgive them, okay? But I would say probably what's more likely going on is it's not just that, it's probably overall some anxiety and stress that she's having, because like I highly doubt that it's just one thing. It's probably an overall level of agitation and stress that is just persistent. And
we went back to her back, knot was completely gone.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've experienced this with you, where like,
wow. Oh my God. So someone had tight muscles, a knot, and then you discussed relaxation techniques and shit with them. And wow, the muscles relaxed.
Like maybe like our second or third session, you touched my jaw or my neck and I started coughing and choking. I couldn't catch my breath for a long time. And then we worked on it. And then at the end of our session, you touched it again and there was nothing was there. And so I've experienced a physical, like a tension and those sort of things leaving fast.
The body.
It's crazy.
It will leave that quick.
Maybe you just had something stuck in your throat and you just needed to get it out. Jesus Christ. How do you know that you would have kept... have you never like gotten something stuck in your throat and you just start like that happens all the time. That happens all the time. And you don't have to do anything about chakras because you cleared it out by coughing. All the time. That happens all the time. Are you saying that it's because like when she... I don't care. That was a coincidence then. That happens all the time.
I never saw that lady for like 2 years. And I always thought, I was like, I wonder if that knot ever came back. I happened to run into her.
No way.
Out of nowhere. And she's like, Kimberly, you'll never believe that knot is still gone.
Oh, that's awesome. That's crazy.
And that's
like
how quickly
stab you in the back thing.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yep.
That's so.
But that just also gives people hope that the body can heal very quickly.
Very quickly.
Do they not understand that when you're emotionally stressed and agitated, you do this? And that when you use a muscle for a long time, it gets tired and shortens? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, it's the more that I learn, the more I understand we don't know anything.
We don't know anything.
We don't know anything. We're not, like, no one's teaching us correctly. We are so powerful. We are.
Oh, I agree. No one's teaching you correctly. See how she's troubled by not knowing anything, but she's completely uncurious about actual knowledge because it's not complete enough for her.
A big one that I've been thinking a lot about this year is this idea that energetically we are with people all the time. Like when I was doing my meditation this morning, I was energetically wrapping my boys in love and light and all of those things because they're at camp. And I know for a fact that energy hit their body. And it was like, as soon as I had this understanding that we're
Let's test that.
all connected to God and we're all connected to each other, that we believe that, like, from a you need to be
I'm not connected to God. I blocked him on Grindr.
physically present with someone to, like, energetically be with someone. And I have this happen all the time where, like, someone will pop into my brain or my heart and I'll dedicate sort of a meditation to them and they'll call me. I haven't talked to them in 6 months. And they're like, oh.
That happens all the time. Happens all the time. That is not profound. That is not some, like, that is a mundane experience that happens all the time. Happens all the time.
So they're like, oh, I just was feeling you today. And I'm like, oh, I bet you were. There's so much out there. And in the rest, I will seek the rest of my life and I'll barely scratch the surface of all that we're able to know, or how powerful our bodies and our spirits and energetically, vibrationally, all of those things. We're just barely learning what's possible.
Okay, well, that's the end of part 1, and my God, that was so difficult for me. That was so long. It feels like it's been years. I don't know if I can do part 2. I don't know if I can stomach it. It makes me so angry, and then I'm gonna have that knot in the back, because I stab in the back thing or whatever. Jesus Christ. Like, imagine having this much confidence in your own perception of the world and just being so confident that you can just make shit up and it's true. You don't need to go to school for 7 years for this shit. Rachel she just comes out and says it. Because obviously, it's obvious. Obviously, the reason that your back lacks, okay, and you just need to align your throat chakra and you'll stop coughing. That's the only way anyone has ever stopped coughing, you guys, okay? I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye!